As I alluded to before, our first guest tonight is a venture capitalist and a relatively recent transplant to the Front Range. 3 years ago? 2 years ago. Also the founder and general partner of Moxxie Ventures. She has noted that this is Microsoft's fault in terms of the brand not coming through the way it was originally intended. Please help me welcome Katie Stanton. Katie.
You have the clicker?
Oh. I do not have a clicker.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. Yes, I do my presentations in Keynote, and CU is on PC. So if anyone here is from Microsoft and can fix this transition issue, please do. So as Brad mentioned, I'm a venture capitalist now based in Boulder. I moved here a couple years ago from the Bay Area. I followed my oldest daughter who went to CU, and she told me that's super weird to follow your kids to college, but I don't think so, so I'm rolling with it. And so, you know, when I was a little girl, did I ever think I want to be a venture capitalist? Like, hell no. Like, what's a venture capitalist? I had no idea what a VC was. And having lived in Silicon Valley for 20 years, most of the VCs I met were just really not nice people. So I was like, I definitely don't want to do that. So, but life is funny in many ways. And it was a very organic approach. So my background is an operator. I was at Yahoo, Google, Twitter, and Color Health. And I was a product manager. I did growth, I did marketing, a bunch of things. And while I was at these amazing companies, I met all these incredible entrepreneurs and engineers who were starting new things. And I became an angel investor, which I thought was really interesting. And so after doing that for a number of years, all of a sudden I wanted angel investing to be my day job. And how could I do that? And so I did a terrible job of convincing any of my friends to join me for Fund One. And part of the reason I came to Boulder, not only to follow my daughter and live in this amazing place, was that one of my longtime friends and colleagues, his name is Alex Redder, happened to live in Boulder as well. He was a head of engineering at Twitter. He's a brilliant software engineer. I was telling Brad, who's in the social dilemma, talking about the ethics of AI. And so I did a better job this time, a couple years ago, convincing him to join me. So we joined forces a couple years ago to build our second fund. We're now based in Boulder. We're really proud of that. And one fun fact, when we were telling our LPs, our biggest investors, one of whom is Foundry based here, but some of our Bay Area ones, that we're going to do this from Boulder, they were like, oh man, you're never going to get any deals. This is going to be really hard. This is going to be really terrible. And now a couple of them were like, well, how is housing market in Boulder? Do you have a good real estate agent? So it's all working out. So here's our small but mighty team. There are 4 of us, 2 of us full-time, Alex and myself, and we're sourcing and vetting and supporting the founders that we support. Ina Halalu is our associate who's getting her MBA at Wharton, and then Marie Drez is doing all of our financial work, and she's our part-time CFO. So we're a small but mighty team. And we have 3 active funds. So Fund One was just me, a 25 million fund, and focused on early stage investing. And that's been the focus also for Fund Two. So for Fund Two, we actually ended up raising 85 million, which we're really proud of. And our goal is to back amazing founders building software solutions to hard problems that help a lot of people. And then we found that many of our early angel investing companies started to come up to market for their Series A or Series B that didn't quite fit into our fund. So we created a third fund called Moxxie, which is our target is 50 million. We've raised 30 million so far to try to get into some of our breakout companies. So our target investment criteria. So I mentioned we look for software solutions to hard problems that help a lot of people. The categories that we love the most are enterprise. So Tad, I'm going to call you afterwards. Climate tech and health tech. We are notoriously boring. We don't do crypto. We don't do Web3. We don't do fashion or music. We really try to focus on the solutions that we think are really going to help a lot of businesses and people live their best lives. We look for potential, not necessarily pedigree. So we invest in teams all over the world. In Fund Two, actually, we have 7 companies. 5 of those 7 companies are all based outside the United States. Nairobi, Tel Aviv, Melbourne. And so supporting talent where they may be is really important to us. We look at IQ and EQ. We don't invest in assholes, which is something important, something we learned in Silicon Valley. Like, it's just really important to work with great people. I'm sorry for the bad language. It's coming from California. I blame California. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah, you're awesome. We look for people. We look for demonstrated execution ability. So it's one thing to have a really big idea. It's another to know how to execute that big idea. So we look at some kind of a track record. We look at people and teams that can be category leaders. And one thing we learned the hard way, and this sounds really snooty, but I think it's important, at least for us, is that we look for at least one technical founder at the get-go, or at least that first engineer hired, because it's so hard to find technical talent. There's such a big competition for it. So we have made that one of our criteria. And last but not least, it has to be world positive. We want to make sure everything that we back does good in the world. A few of our early bets, and again, this is a Microsoft problem because my transitions were flawless in Keynote, but they're not so great here. So we have one company called Daily it's an API dev tool helping with audio and video chat. Lumini, which is helping to automate workflows. The third one is August Health, which is a better CRM system for nursing homes, which we think there's a ton of upside and opportunity there to make it easier for loved ones in nursing homes. Certain, which does background checks. They're based in Victoria, Canada. And then Clubhouse, which is like, I don't know about this. There's multiple now because it's been a funny market, but these are amazing teams building audio communities, which we've really become fond of. So what have we learned? Brad had asked, well, what have you learned along the way? It's one thing to start a venture capital firm in a great market because everyone looks like a genius. It's another thing to start a VC firm in a really tough market, which is where we are now. So the main things that we've learned, it's all about the founders. P0 is investing in great talent, and they're there for a particular reason. This is their life's work. This is a really important problem to them. One of our most exciting founders is a young engineer from southern India who grew up in a family of coconut farmers. And when he was 12, he received a Rubik's Cube. And he became so good at it, he became India's national champion. And he used all this potential, came to Silicon Valley, crashed Stanford to learn computer science. Everyone just assumed he was just a smart kid in class. And that's how he learned how to code. And then he would live in these hacker houses. And when he wrote his life story on this Notion page about how he wants to build this company to break the cycle of poverty in his country, in his family, I was like, I'm in. I don't even care what you build. Like, this is an amazing founder with amazing potential. We look for great judgment. A lot of that great judgment comes from awesome experience. It's either building something themselves, working for a world-class organization, going to a great school like CU. Founders are disciplined, focused, relentless on solving a particular problem. People who are building problems and solutions that are must-haves, not nice to have. So this is medicine, not necessarily a vitamin kind of a product. People who communicate fearlessly, it's important to sell. It's important to sell your investors, your employees, your sales partners, all these others. We believe that profit and purpose can coexist. So we are not a nonprofit. We need to make a lot of money for our investors. We have a few investors in the room, so don't worry, we're still working on that. But we do believe that these things can coexist. One of my personal things that I've learned the hard way is that we can research only so much. We invest in seed when it's just an idea, but you also have to trust your gut. And there were a few times where I don't know, this person might be a little bit full of it, and other people would sell me into it. And I've learned, yep, they were totally full of it, and I should have trusted my gut. So, so you have to research what you can, but really trust your gut, especially at seed stage. And why does any of this matter? We believe, and I believe, that venture capital is not just about making money, but it's influencing the outcomes that you want to see in the world. If you want to make it easier for people to access better healthcare, if you want to do a better job of protecting our planet, if you want to help reduce economic inequality, and I believe that venture capital can do that. The playing field is not level, it's terrible. So some of the WTF stats, female founders receive only 2.5% of any venture funding. Black founders only receive 1%. We're really proud of the founders that we back. We have a lot of diversity in our teams, but it's still not fair. So we have to work on that. There are only 13% of decision makers in venture are women, and only 64% of VC firms don't have any female partners. So there's just so much inequality at the funding level and at the founding level. So it's something that we think can make a positive difference in the world. And for some of the founders in here who are wondering, is now a good time to build? hell yeah, it's a great time to build. This is an awesome time because there's so many big problems in the world, and there are VCs who have dry powder like me who are ready to like invest. So this very day, go for it. How to contact us, katie@moxxie.vc. We always appreciate little followers on the Twitters. I used to work at Twitter, so that's all good, @Moxxie Ventures. And then let's go Buffs.
So we'll open up for questions. I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative before we let you go, Katie. And first question is, in terms of what you've learned, tantalizing to hear investments in Nairobi, Tel Aviv, terrific story of a founder from India, especially at the pre-seed, seed stage where you guys are getting in, lots of uncertainty. How are you getting the deal flow to those founders? And then how do you do your diligence? Maybe you could talk about Nairobi in particular.
Yeah, so sourcing deals is just a grind. Like you just have to be on it a lot. So we do a lot of travel. We have really good networks. But I would say the best referrals that we get, the best sources we get are from the founders that we back, or even the founders that we meet. And most of the time, 99% of the time, we say no. But we try to always deliver a really good experience. So if it's a no, here's why, and here's how we can hopefully help. And if it's a yes, we will throw every resource imaginable to try to help our founders. So that reputation is really important. This is a reputation business. And so we rely also on our investors, our partners, people that we've worked with in the past who have also sent us a lot of deals. And then vetting is hard, especially hard internationally. The Nairobi one is kind of cheating because the founder went to Stanford with my business partner. So we had a little bit of a backdoor ability to be able to vet Jit and the rest of his team. And I happen to have lived in Kenya in graduate school. So we had a little bit of an edge there. We have a company in Australia that we didn't know at all. And we had that referral from actually one of our LPs. So we figured, well, if she really liked the deal and she was an early angel investor, let's dig in and do whatever kind of research we can.
Questions? Thanks, Sarah.
This is more of a generalized question. As a founder to VC firm, how do you select your LPs? Like, what is your criteria for deciding whose money to take?
I love this question.
Can I just interject?
Yeah.
So I know that many people know what a limited partner is. For those who are not familiar with the world of venture capital, usually a venture capitalist is investing primarily money coming from other people who say, Katie, you know people, you know startups. Let me give you a pile of money, and I hope that you return me a big pile of money. Those are limited partners. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's such a good question. So for Fund One, it's a matter of survival. So I tried to get capital wherever I could from people that I worked with in the past, from entrepreneurs, from engineers, and then a few institutions. And I was really lucky and really proud to get Foundry, who's based here. And so I had 3 institutions for Fund One who backed me. But the long-term goal, and where we made a lot of progress in Fund Two, is that we want to make sure that as much as we push for diversity and world positiveness in the companies that we back, we do the same for the people who back us, and we return that capital to these organizations. So what we did for Fund Two, we're talking to universities. Northwestern is one of our anchor LPs. We have a number of outsourced CIOs who all support nonprofits. The Nature Conservancy is one that we're working with for our next fund, and Southern Poverty Law Center. So we're trying to make sure we have a lot of great worthy organizations, maybe CU for Fund 3. And we also track diversity in our LPs. And we're really excited for Fund 2 that half of our LPs were women, 68% or 69% of the capital that we received came from female check writers, and 30%, I think 30% or 37 or 47% were BIPOC. So we're really proud of that. We have a long way to go. One other thing too, and so this is a little bit of a ramble, but there's so much inequity with the endowments in the universities. So the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, have maybe like $1.5 billion in their endowments. There are high schools in the United States that have that same amount. So one of our goals going forward is to make sure that we can partner with a lot of HBCUs and hopefully return a lot of capital their way.
Thank you.
So you say, So you said you moved to Boulder from the Bay Area and that you're also dealing with other countries, including Tel Aviv. Curious about if you could point out one major difference, either culturally or in your industry, that you see between Bay Area, Boulder.
Well, the most obvious one is that in the Bay Area, everyone's like, what do you do? And you're like, I'm a VC, or I'm an engineer, or I work at Google. Like, that's kind of the standard. And then here, I remember the first person who asked me, like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a VC. They're like, what's that? I'm like, oh, well, I invest in companies. But I meant, like, what do you do? Do you bike? Do you run, or whatever? And now I've learned that's a trick question, because if you say, like, you bike, they're like, great, let's go on a 100-mile bike ride. I'm like, no, I mean, like, my electric bike down to Alpine Modern and back, you know? So it's one of the differences, which I really love and appreciate. It's so well-rounded here. People are, when they really want to get to know you, it's like, really you, like, what makes you you, and let's spend time together.
All right, this is great. Please help me give a warm thank you to Katie Stanton. Thanks, Katie. All right, so our next presenter is part of a company called ColdQuanta, and I was just speaking with Max in terms of the journey of this company. I actually, and Julie Penner is here. Julie, you graduated from CU Law, what year? 2010. She also did a joint MBA. When Julie was here, we worked together advising an angel investor in the community and looking at deals. An early deal that we looked at was this company called ColdQuanta. Max, sorry, we passed. But we were like, God, this is amazing technology. It just feels like it's going to be a while, was the response. And watching ColdQuanta over the years go from serious research, you'll hear a little bit about that, to finding grants for some period of time, and now increasingly a commercially viable business model in the area of quantum, which is something that I think all of us are trying to get our heads around. Please help me welcome Max Perez. Max.
Hi, everyone. So I'm actually not the founder of ColdQuanta. I've just worked there for a very, very long time. So our VP Marketing, Sarah, joined me today, and she put together a fantastic little clip from some of the other people at ColdQuanta who can speak for me for about.
Today, we are on the cusp of being able to put quantum to practical use.
And ColdQuanta has been at the forefront of this industry since its inception.
You'll have quantum systems in maybe your autonomous car. There'll be quantum systems operating on satellites, on aeroplanes. Every data center in the world will have quantum. And we believe that atoms are the best and most efficient way to achieve this.
Quite frankly, one of the most exciting industries ever in the history of mankind.
So you're probably still wondering what we do.
Today, we are on the cusp of being able.
First, right.
And they don't need to tell you again. So, so here is a little bit more. Let me see if I can get to the full screen. Full screen. There we go. All right. So again, I'm Max. I'm the VP of Research and Security Solutions. I've been at ColdQuanta for 10 years. The company's been around for 15. I like to say it's the world's oldest startup. Again, what we do is we could own the quantum product spectrum. I probably still don't know exactly what we do. Here's actually a better one. We've established quantum technology can be widely applicable across the quantum space, from positioning to telemetry to quantum computers. So what we do is we build technologies that power quantum systems, and the applications are extremely broad. I've been around for 10 years, so I've worked on many of them. And I'll talk a little bit about all the systems that we build today. What we've become, our journey's been a little strange in that for the first 6 or 7 years that I was there, we were about 24 people. In the last 4 years, quantum has become extremely popular. both in the venture community and in the popular press. Due to that, we've accelerated very rapidly over the last few years we have offices in Boulder, we have a new facility in Louisville, we have offices in Madison and Chicago, and we have an office that I had the pleasure of starting in Oxford in the UK. We're north of 200 employees right now. Most of them are highly technical. Many of them have PhDs. And they're very, very focused on trying to bring to the world the things that quantum can do. One of our more recent awards was in our Maxwell-based systems, which is the idea that you can use quantum technologies to build a better antenna. So something as simple as an antenna can in fact be made much better simply by building them out of individual atoms instead of pieces of metal. We keep all of those atoms for these technologies in little glass cells. Whenever I'm at a cocktail party, I like to say we build glass jars, we suck all the air out, we put a few atoms in, and then we poke them with lasers. These cells are basically at the heart of all of our systems. Because we have the capability of building the world's best cells, we can also make some of the world's best quantum systems. But how do they work? So our quantum computing platform, quantum computing is the idea that if you build computers out of individual quantum mechanical particles, you can actually make them run much, much faster than any supercomputer that exists today. That is to say, if you had a quantum computer powerful enough and quiet enough, you can solve problems that quantum supercomputers could never solve. We build our computers out of individual arrays of atoms. These individual arrays are stuffed in a cell like this. We also build high-performance atomic clocks. You might not be aware that two of the world's best atomic clocks are within a mile of where you're sitting right now. We supply those organizations with their core technologies. They look like cells like this. And then we also build our own atomic clocks at ColdQuanta. We also build inertial sensors. These are sensors that sense motion. Every plane you've ever flown in has a suite of these sensors involved. Variations of these sensors also exist in your cell phones. Basically, we put atoms into cells like this. We manipulate them into things like circles and lines, and they become accelerometers or gyroscopes. Finally, if you use collections of these atoms, you can build antenna systems that are better than any RF receiver that exists today. And it's better in a variety of different ways. It's smaller, it has higher sensitivity, and it can sense a wider range of frequencies than current systems can. We also can combine these various technologies into advanced navigation systems that could eventually replace current GPS-based navigation. And then a little bit more about our quantum computer. Our quantum computer, again, is based on two-dimensional arrays of atoms, all poked with various laser systems in order to create what are known as quantum gates. But the reason why we're so excited about our quantum computing technology is because it's massively scalable. So circling back to what I said originally, the challenge in quantum computing is making one large enough, powerful enough, and controllable enough in order to solve the world's hardest problems. The reason why ColdQuanta feels like it can make a quantum computer better than the other efforts out there is because we base our technology on making the individual atoms that are at the heart of these gates colder than some of the other approaches that are being used. That is to say, we laser cool our atoms down to a fraction of a degree above absolute zero. Each of those atoms holds the information used in the quantum gate, And because the noise in those atoms is so low, the fidelity or the information that comes out of using those atoms in processing is better than some of the other approaches being employed for quantum computing. Because we use lasers to cool down our atoms, we don't require any cryogenics. Because we have access to all of our atoms, they don't have any connectivity problems. And then we have a number of other paths to the holy grail of quantum computing, which is error correction. So these are the systems that ColdQuanta is basing its future on. We also have developed a system where other quantum researchers can base their future on. That's our Albert platform. Albert is a quantum emulator that gives other researchers in the field the ability to develop their own technologies more rapidly and based on the know-how that we've developed at ColdQuanta. It's a cloud-based platform that allows other people to essentially dial in and study the properties of quantum physics so that they can develop their own quantum technologies. And that's it for ColdQuanta.
So we thank Max. Max, could I take you back 3 or 4 slides as we get going in terms of questions? And the one with the, yep, right here. All right, so here's a gist as to how my story is about the business model. Things like the quantum emulator are a path to commercialization and being active in the area, but these are the big ticket items that you're developing. In terms of each of these, I'm hearing everything from like 2 years out to 15 years out for some of these things. What sort of time horizon in terms of each of these, can you give us an estimate? So quantum computing, what are we looking at?
No, that's actually a great question. They're all on different time horizons. The nearest one in is probably atomic clocks. Atomic clocks are used today. Every GPS satellite has one. Every data center in the world has one. There's a market today, and it's about making a better clock that's more portable and more robust that can be used in a variety of field applications. We expect to have our version of a quantum atomic clock on the market in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Quantum computing is a long-term bet. It always has been. If you talk to our lead in this area, Mark Safman, out of the University of Wisconsin, he'll say it's 10 years out before somebody solves a real hard problem with a quantum computer. And that's because quantum computing is probably the most complicated quantum technology or quantum instrument being developed today. Now, a lot of people are developing it because it has an incredible amount of power. You see them online and generating revenue today, but in terms of actually solving the world's problems, it's probably 5 to 10 years away. Inertial sensors are already being employed. There's currently a market for it, but the quantum approach to inertial sensing is also very complicated. It's probably on that same 5 to 10 year horizon. RF is an interesting beast. It is fundamentally entangled with platform or system level development. So it requires buy-in from extremely large organizations. But it's also one of the fields.
Like say Motorola or
Motorola is
Department
actually a
of
great
Defense?
example.
Okay.
A great example of somebody who would be interested in this technology. I would have maybe a year ago said it was also on that 5 to 10 year horizon, but it's just been accelerating very, very rapidly. So it may start to see real engagement on that 3 to 5 year horizon.
Super helpful. Questions? Sort of over here.
The machines that you use to build these like quantum technologies, do you guys make them yourself or do you guys get them from somebody?
So these cells, we make it ourselves in-house in Boulder. This one was hand assembled and built and processed in Boulder. Our core technologies are all built in-house. The systems we build around them are built in-house. Many of those components and the hardware that goes into those systems, we procure from other organizations. The heart of your question might come from one very key fact in our flavor of quantum technology is that we deal with the atoms. We let other people deal with light, also kind of a Boulder cottage industry. The laser industry is a driver of this technology, and we generally let other people handle that side of the problem.
Let's come up here. Sarah, we'll give the mic over to Dale. I'm going to guess Dale's going to ask about RF frequency.
Excuse me, had a conference here where a lot of the focus is on improving receivers, because if the receiver is a sloppy receiver, it gets noise and interference from way outside the band it is supposed to be listened to, or the channel. What characteristics of is it? Sensitivity, selectivity? What distinguishes a quantum radio receiver from what we can build conventionally today?
So sensitivity is kind of the low-hanging fruit, but I like that you mentioned selectivity, because I think that's the most important part about these quantum-based RF systems. Because they're based on quantum transitions, the band is extremely narrow. However, we have the capability to select different parts of the spectrum based on the laser that we drive the transition with. So these are optically driven transitions. And if you use a tunable laser, you can actually shift the position of those transitions on the fly. So it's kind of like a software-based radio, but it's a software-based quantum radio. That transition can be octave spanning, so it can be very, very broad, and it maintains the narrow selectivity. Now, the trick that you might be alluding to is quantum transitions are quantized, so there is a gap between them. We've developed a number of techniques so that we can use other properties in order to shift the entire spectrum and close the gap between the transitions, so we can get quasi-continuous tuning across perhaps an octave of spectrum.
All right. Yeah, let's take one more question over there. Last one.
Hi, can you speak as to the resource intensiveness of some of these products or applications? I know you mentioned that you don't deal with the lasers as much, but anything that you can share on the resource intensiveness?
So the number one, resource that limits the advancement of this technology is people. Places like CU can only pump out so many PhDs every year, and they're very much limited by the workforce. So that's the number one thing. The second is, for our branch of quantum technology, is the laser systems. Laser systems, the grade of lasers that we use are very much a cottage industry. They are expensive, they're clunky, they're prone to failure and then require service from the OEM that made them. That's what limits our progress in terms of our system level technologies, is getting these laser systems in-house, uptime, maintenance, and serviceability. Everything else is the same problems that any other OEM, any manufacturing organization is going to face in terms of supply chain. Last few years, supply chain's been pretty rough. That slowed us down a little bit, but everybody has been facing those issues.
All right, this has been terrific. Please help me thank Max. That's great. For those of you who are at the September show, Artisan Bio was here, and I just love some of these presentations that are helping us see as to what might be coming around the next couple corners. CU has some of the IP in connection with ColdQuanta as well. All right, and that's a perfect segue to bringing up Sally, who, as I mentioned before, is managing director and a founder with Buff Gold Venture Fund. If you go back to the early days of ColdQuanta, when you've got a technology like this that's clearly path-breaking, one of the cliches, it's a terrific solution in search of a problem. And the problem that you're going to be able to find maybe 10, 15 years down the road Well, if you're trying to build a startup around that, that can be really difficult for the venture model for starters, especially the traditional venture model where the venture capitalist has to return money to the limited partners on a 10-year horizon. Okay, so ColdQuanta, as Max mentioned, has already been around longer than that. And so a real problem at CU is Bryn and others see, hey, there's fantastic technology here. How can we get it a little bit of lift? And with that, I'll introduce Sally Hatcher. Please help me welcome Sally.
I could not have prepped you better because I'm going to hit on 2 points of that. So, hi everybody, I'm Sally Hatcher. I'm not using slides for a specific reason that I'm hoping we'll have more of a conversation. I'd love to talk about startups and how to get them started, which is what I really do. So my background is I'm a CU Law grad, and I'm a couple of time founder, been in a bunch of small companies. So I'd sat at every seat of the table and I realized that I wanted more women to be in the money and helping to stand up really fantastic companies. So I have just helped stand up CU's first venture fund. So it's called Buff Gold Ventures, and I'm now a managing partner with my partner, Mark Lupa. And we are not CU, but we're affiliated. So we are Buff supporters, and we can invest in anything coming out of the university. So that's founders who are faculty, who are students, staff, and alums, which is a broad category. So a lot of us can be involved. And we have a focus. We will look at any technology or any idea coming off campus, but we're really interested in these deep tech ideas. So ColdQuanta is such a good example of a long-term success story that took a while to get its feet under it. And figure out what in the world to do with that early work from Eric Cornell and Carl Wyman and Dave Wineland and Jan Hall. What do we do with Nobel Prize winning work? And it takes a while. So we want to invest in these ideas that are challenging and difficult and can radically change the world for the better. So that's who Buff Gold is. Let me tell you just a tiny bit about a couple of our first investments since we're new this year. My first investment was in tint technology. It's glass. And I just love this company. Our founder, our CEO, Amin Zafir, is just a charismatic guy who can sell anybody on the idea that we need better windows. So they are both, they're darkening, they're like sunglasses for your house, but they also reflect heat. So they are incredibly impressive in what they can do for HVAC and energy. So clean tech. And what I really like, a couple of interesting things is just that lab, Mike McGee's lab on campus is a powerhouse lab with more technology coming out of it for better windows. I really, really like that they have figured out how to build a great team. So the team is fantastic in understanding the technology and going out and immediately getting a really strong business model. So they have partnered with a company that is going to bring their products to market, roll them out very strongly across Europe and then across the US. And they have given them price targets to build their product against. So I really like the idea that this company is innovative technically, but that they really understand that you have to have a business in order to get it out of the lab. So we also have invested in two young whippersnappers who are just finishing off their graduate work called Vitro 3D. And it's just really interesting volumetric 3D printing that they're going to take first into the dental market. So think dental aligners. So, and we love that. We love that they came to CU with a vision of what they wanted to do. They got their PhD. They took that technology out of the lab. They've been very successful in fundraising, growing their team now, and creating their first partnerships with industry so that they can bring their products to market. So that's what we do. Then the last question is sort of, how do I get funded? So what does it take to interest a VC? And really, again and again, you're going to hear this. It's about the team. Don't work with jerks. That's how we say it. But it's also, you need to be innovative and hardworking. You really need to be able to not quit the first 16 times things get wrong, because they will. You need to be able to work with other people and be able to share a diversity of opinion. It is true that in all of our investments so far, all have diverse founding teams, but that's an outward manifestation of what you have to have inside, that you have to have this, diversity of opinion and thinking so that you come up with a better pathway and the ability to pivot. After team, that real question is, in business speak for the leads folks, it's the product market fit. But the way that I think of this is all these technical folks, the way that you're funded at CU in engineering and the sciences is you're funded to go create a solution. And you do this incredible work in the lab, and you think, who needs it? Well, everybody in the world needs quantum computing. Okay, but who's gonna actually buy that? So the problem is that often we invent a solution and then we have to go find the problem. So the thing that we look for as investors is, do you understand your customer's problem? And if you understand what your customer actually needs, like what's going wrong for them and what will they actually buy, like specifically who will buy what, that's what we're looking for. And the cool thing is that this is really doable. This is findable information for everybody. There's a process called customer discovery, and I'm pretty well obsessed with it. So I think that so much of this is getting out of your lab, out of your classroom, out of your own head. Go talk to people. Go ask the people that you want to sell something to, hey, what are you actually doing today? Do you use quantum computers today? If you don't, what are you using? And is it working for you today? So it's looking for that question of, if it's not working, what is that incredibly hard problem that you actually need a quantum computer to solve? So what's the problem that they're trying to solve? And then what are they willing to pay for? So the last thing I'll say on that is that the beauty of this, again, is at CU, there is this training available for you, and it's free, and it's right here on campus. Bryn has a program that I helped stand up called Research to Market. And there are multiple parts of that. There's starting blocks. There's the whole NSF I-Core program. All of that's free and available to you. And you can do it right here on campus. So if you are curious about learning how to go talk to customers, please see Bryn or come talk to me and I'll point you in the right direction. So I'll stop there because I'd love to take questions and just think about how to start companies.
Thank you. Questions? I'm going to ask one as we're getting started. Some of the VCs that I know will make an early investment in an area that they're not sure that this is necessarily the right team or the right company, but they want to learn about this area. It seems to me that there's a lot of areas that you're covering in terms of deep tech.
Right.
Is that something that's part of your thesis, or how do you, get up to speed in an area where someone's doing, research that is, world leading and not easy to understand?
Yes, super interesting. So actually one that I'm working on right now is quantum, and how do we get more quantum companies coming out of the absolutely phenomenal world-class work that happens here at Gilla. So what we are researching into quantum, but what we're walking through labs, we're going down to Adam Kaufman's lab and finding out what he's doing. But we're also trying to figure out who are the right people to get on the bus in order to actually start a company, to take one piece of that out and try to de-risk it. So it's a kind of a combination of learning the field really well, understanding the assets that we have available, and then who are the people in the greater community who want to come join a startup to build one.
Questions?
Hey, Sally. We've talked a lot about the Buff Fund, so I'm going to come at a different angle that we haven't talked about. I don't think anybody ever at CU Boulder has really cataloged or investigated what our alumni are doing in startups. And I bet it's amazing things. So early days in your fund, but what are you learning about what and where our alumni are up to, given that they are, potential deal flow from your fund? What are you seeing alumni startups?
Yeah, it's incredibly diverse. So another quantum company is IonQ. And that's Chris Monroe, again, out of campus here, who's gone off and built another company that SPAC'd last year. We're also, it's so fun because people are now coming to me with electronic health records. So software companies that you would never, you know, they're not really talked about on campus, but people leave, graduate, go off, learn something new, and then start their own company. So we are seeing just an incredible variety. Everything from, you know, LinkedIn upgrades and to hardware, like, you know, robotics companies have come to us and said, I'm out of a CU lab. I have a 40-person company now that I do consulting, and I want to translate this from services into products. I'm trying to figure out how to do that, how to get it funded, and how to pivot my business. So it's been really fun to learn about a far larger ecosystem than I had certainly been aware of. And part of our goal will be really trying to connect this community of who else is out there, you know, who else is actually a CU affiliate in some way, and what are they doing, and how can we get involved?
Building a fintech startup. Just moved back to Boulder. Oh, I was just going to give you a sample of one that I'm a CU alumni and had a corporate career and now building a fintech startup back in Boulder after Bay Area and Israel. So. That's fantastic.
So glad to meet you. Let's talk afterwards.
One more question. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a CU alumni from Econ department. And years ago, I had a great business idea, but I had no idea how to launch it. So right now I have to do a different routine, and I will talk to you later. I think I can do it grants.
Mm-hmm.
And, but my question is that does it has to be a faculty?
No.
And who should I talk to for that kind of information?
So there are some, yeah.
Go through CU as well. So I think 90% of the money, yeah, will be coming to CU and produce more money.
Okay. So that's there's so much to say there. So really briefly, because a lot of these things takes you know, when you're doing hardware is hard, it takes a long time. Often you do start with grant funding before you come to venture. So there is a lot of grant funding. There is some on campus, and it typically, that does involve for CU faculty and staff, like the Lab Venture Challenge is for CU faculty. But there's a lot that's off campus, the federal money and there's state money, and we can help point you in the right direction for where to look. I would encourage you to talk to Bryn Reese and his team over at Venture Partners. You're welcome to approach me, and I can tell you a little bit about which grants to go for and how to get that, because it's tremendously helpful and it's non-dilutive. It takes a lot of effort. It's kind of the same as fundraising, but the grants are tremendously helpful for getting your idea off the ground, proof of concept, and de-risked.
This is great. Please help me thank Sally Hatcher. All right, Chris, come on up. I met Chris probably about 2 or 3 years ago. In addition to his angel investing work, Chris took an interest in some campus entrepreneurship programs, including setting up a climate prize at Notre Dame. And then 2 years ago, got involved at CU and helped put up a climate prize here with our New Venture Challenge. Chris, take it away.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Brad. Do I have a clicker?
Oh, I think I've got the clicker right here.
Oh, Brad's got it. Okay, good. So I'm working on a project I want to share with you that's in the climate and the crypto space. It's just a project. It's not a startup yet, but I want to share it with you tonight. So it began with a letter I got from my alma mater a couple years ago. I went to Notre Dame. They're the Fighting Irish, this cute little leprechaun we got. It's kind of an odd mascot. But they challenged the alumni to say, look, you've left Notre Dame. What do you do? What are you fighting for in the world? What are you taking a stand on? What are you willing to fight for, right? I remember thinking, that's a great question. Here I'm in Silicon Valley, life is good. Everybody's making money and we're just so comfortable. I thought, what would I actually fight for? And I realized there's an easy answer for me, and that's the climate. So I'm going to share an idea that I have in the climate. So I woke up and said, okay, how do I solve climate change? So, you know, idea number one was go green, right? Put solar in my house, drive an EV, put heat pumps in, eat vegetarian food. And I did that. And it was kind of cool, but it was a very small impact, right? So idea number 2 was to give generously to climate initiatives. And I started doing that, finding some really cool climate organizations, writing checks, and that was kind of a little bit more impact. But I only have so much money, and I can only go so far with check writing, so that really wasn't quite it. Idea number 3 was invest in climate startups. So I started doing that directly as an angel investor and through a couple of really cool funds, one of which is Moxxie Ventures. And so, I thought that was kind of cool, having more impact. But I really wanted to do more. I wanted something kind of bigger and scalable. In the venture world, we say, what's a 10x, 100x you can do? So I remember thinking, I've been giving money to this one organization for 18 years. They have entrepreneurs all over the world, small entrepreneurs with teams of 5, 10, 15 people who are working on a really cool problem. And they're out there doing amazing things. They're like Steve Jobs like people in the middle of nowhere. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, let's go talk to them and see what they're up to, right? Because what I wanted to do was go find a way to help them do what they do 10 times better or 100 times better. So these are what I call the world's best climate, it should be NGOs. Okay, NPOs, same thing, right? That's the idea that I have. So how are we going to do that? First, the green shows the parts of the world where these entrepreneurs exist. There's about 38 of them. They're amazing people. You get to meet them once a year at a big expo in San Francisco. So I remember thinking, okay, I've got a chance to impact everything that's in green here. So I talked to the NGOs. I said, what do you need to go 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger? You know what the answer is, right? Capital, right? They need capital. Every year they go hat in hand and raise capital, $10, $100 at a time. They need $10 million because what they want to do is buy the natural resources that they're protecting. It's mostly land, right? So remember thinking, okay, they need large scale capital. How can I help them get that? So to get that, you find investors, right? And you find what is called impact investors, people who want to write a check that makes a real impact on the world. But a lot of the impact investors I spoke with said, you know what? I don't see the impact. I write a check, but I don't really understand what my check has done. So this is the idea we have. Let's actually make a climate marketplace, right? And that marketplace, let's bring impact investors and the climate NGOs together. And what are they going to exchange with each other? Of course, the investors will give dollars, and the climate NGOs will give measurable impact. And what I mean is, there's one NGO in particular, the one we're working with for project number 1. They're going to plant 5 to 10 million, they're going to buy some land and plant 5 to 10 million new trees and create a biodiversity corridor that lets all this endangered wildlife survive. And they're going to provide jobs to the local communities. But they never really thought, okay, if somebody gives me $25,000, how much carbon is that removing from the atmosphere? How much habitat is it creating for wildlife? How many jobs are you creating for local communities? Those kind of metrics didn't exist. So we thought, let's help these NGOs build out their impact metrics. So one of the first things we're going to do is create a technology platform. Because you imagine, how do you calculate the carbon you're absorbing? That's a technical exercise. It's a lot of data analysis, a lot of data crunching, and they can't afford to do that. But we can help them do that at scale. That's one layer. The second layer we're going to do is help them make money through carbon credits. There's a massive market for carbon today. If you remove carbon from the atmosphere, people will pay you if you get a carbon credit, right? So I met this one entrepreneur, she's in Colombia. I said, what are you doing? She goes, I'm going to buy 2,000 acres of land. I'm going to plant 5 million trees. I went out and I did a little exercise. What's the value of the carbon credits she's sitting on? And I hired a carbon modeling expert who looked at her satellite imagery, looked at where there were trees, looked where there was bare land, calculated the trees, the spacing of the planting, the age of the trees. He ran a whole algorithm. I had to pay him to do this. And you know what I discovered? She's sitting on $8 to $10 million worth of carbon credits, right? She had no idea. So what if we can help her get those carbon credits and then sell those on the markets. And that's $8 to $10 million at today's price. The carbon prices are going up every year. So maybe she's sitting on 15, 20, $30 million of capital. But she can't do that. She's a biologist, and this is a lot of technology work to do that. So we're going to do that layer too. We might even try to create a new asset class called climate credits. When you go out and you plant trees and you save wildlife and you create jobs and you build biodiversity, there's some emerging thinking, you should be paid to do that, right? And that's called a climate credit. Maybe we can bring that asset to the marketplace too. And the third layer is NFTs and blockchain. NFT is like a currency we can use. You invest in an NGO, we'll give you an NFT that shows the impact you made. You want to buy and sell a carbon credit, we can put it on chain. You can buy and sell credits on a blockchain. You want to get sort of membership benefits for being part of this community, again, an NFT can do that too. These are really some fun layers we can add to the idea and kind of make it work at scale. So Brad asked me to focus on one thing that was interesting. So of the 3 red things, I decided to focus on the impact because I'm kind of most excited about that. I want to show you how we do that. By the way, we're called ReWorld. That's our name. Brad, how do I click on that link? I got to move the mouse. There we go. Okay. This is the preserve in Colombia, our first project that we're working on. These are actual video clips of the endangered wildlife that we're going to protect, the trees that are there, and new trees we're going to plant. But basically, we're inviting people to become a part owner in this rainforest we're going to build. And we're going to show you how you do that. Go to our website, kind of scroll down a bit. Okay, I'm on a IBM, very new. So you can scroll down and you can see your impact, right? What if you gave $25,000? What would that do to the world? We know this, we've actually calculated this. It's kind of challenging, but that'll buy 20 acres of land. That'll remove 73 tons of carbon from the atmosphere every year. The average US citizen consumes about 4.6 tons per year. I'm sorry, about 15 tons a year. So you've actually offset the carbon for about 4.5 citizens. Now, I know that I live in Silicon Valley, I've got a big home, and I probably consume a lot more than the average American, but probably with a $25,000 investment, I can offset my entire family's carbon footprint every year for the next 40 years. That's pretty cool, right? A third metric, how many cotton tops are benefiting from my investment? Those 20 acres house about 10 cotton tops. That's one family. A cotton top is a monkey. It's endangered. So I know that I'm helping provide habitat for 10 cotton tops, right? And the final metric is, how many jobs am I helping create in Colombia, those local communities? And Rosamira, she's the NGO and the conservationist in Colombia. She said, Chris, we'll be providing about 3.2 jobs in the local communities for that $25,000 grant. So what we want to do is give people a really smart, analytical way to measure the impact that they make when they invest in these projects. So we got one project we're working on. We're going to tee it up. If it works, we're going to go at scale and do some other projects. We're talking with a real rock star in the conservation world. If she endorses us, it'll be amazing. I really shouldn't give her name out until she says yes. And there's a couple other rock stars probably in this room. I'll ask for their endorsement too, because we just want to get the word out about what we're trying to do to help solve climate change. And the last thing I want to do is show you how you actually do this. My co-founder is 26. He's a smart guy. You're going to go to our website. There's a map of the land we want to buy. You can go pick a hectare and say, look, I want to buy that hectare, right? And I'll say, okay, let's add that to my impact cart. So there's the impact I got from that 1 hectare. You can see what's happening down below. That's not enough. Let's say I want to go buy another hectare. Click on that, add that. Now my impact score is going up even more. I can go finally buy, click on a partial hectare, maybe buy 10% of that. And then I say, add that to my impact. Now you can sort of like you go shopping on Amazon, you can buy more acres, create more impact, and see how you're going to change the world. That's the idea we have. It's kind of a nonprofit idea, but there's so much technology in here, we might consider doing something on the startup side, but right now we're just trying to go out and make a change in climate. So that's it. Thanks for your time.
Frontier that way. Yeah. Let's take a couple questions and we'll bring up.
I really like this idea. I think it's a great way, to deal with climate change. The one thing that I was a little concerned about it with, if you go back to your slideshow, was the NFT blockchain, which is arguably somewhat of a dirty climate industry. How do you plan to mitigate the carbon?
I'm so glad you asked that question because, we have been wrestling in our soul with that question for a while, right? Look, when you go down the rabbit hole, yes, you see a lot of carbon consuming blockchains for sure. We will not choose we're going to choose a zero carbon blockchain, the one we eventually choose. We're looking at Cello because they're committed to even net negative carbon. We're actually being really quiet about our blockchain layer here because there's a lot of controversy with blockchain in the environment. If you know what blockchain is and you pick the right one, you're actually not impacting the environment at all. But we don't want to get into the religious arguments here. So we're building this. When you go to our website, you won't even see any mention of NFT. You're just going to be a quiet technology layer that powers everything. And when you give money, we'll give you an NFT, but it's not going to be, it'll be after the fact. You go, oh, wow, I got an NFT. I'm a member of Reworld. Look at the impact I'm making. Look at the benefits I get. You can sort of you can even sell that NFT later on down the road. But we're not going to put it front and center for exactly the reasons you said. It's a great question.
Thanks. It's really cool. My company works in construction. We build software for construction companies. And there's a lot of talk in the construction technology space about the carbon impact of construction as an industry. Some studies put it at 40% of our global emissions.
Right.
Are you planning to address like a B2B application in the near future with this?
When you think about this at scale, right, we can go to any company that's burning a lot of carbon, say, look, you want to offset your carbon? Buy these credits right here. They're the highest quality credits in the world. When you look at the world of carbon credits, they range from $5 to $35 a ton. Depends on how quality your project is. Rosemary had no idea what she's doing is the highest quality credit out there. So there's companies want to buy those high quality credits. Like one company, Apple Computer, really wants to buy carbon credits, but they're not going to deal with anything that's in the riffraff because their brand will be impacted. So we want to go to Apple and say, look, we've got the highest quality credits in the world. Would you like to buy those at a premium? And hopefully they'd say yes. So the answer is yes. Once we sort of launch this, we like to find corporations who want to buy high quality credits and sort of erase their carbon sins of their business activity. Yeah, for sure.
That makes a lot of sense. I will say, I think a lot of the companies I work with in construction, they're going to buy the cheapest credits they can get that are mandated. When those mandates come, they're going to go commodity.
Well, when that blows up, when somebody finds out they bought credits from a guy who built a golf course and promised not to cut down the trees, right? Their brand is going to be hit hard. So I would encourage them not to even go down at the low quality. It can really harm your reputation for sure.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm so glad you shared this idea. Can I ask for indulgence? You can go about 7:25, and I want to give John ample opportunity to talk about a really cool startup that he and Brendan are working on called Known Privacy. Please help me welcome John Drew.
Thanks for being last. I'll try to keep it interesting. Known privacy is about giving you transparency and control over your personal data. So we all know that we are tracked. Every digital move we make online, everywhere we go, each website, app we use. There are hundreds of companies that follow us around and collect our data and create profiles around about us. And then they sell that data to brands and basically all comers. We all know that we're tracked. Most people do. People feel fairly helpless about it. It's one of those problems that is in the back of our minds, and people don't think it can be solved. We put in a bunch of thought about how you can solve it, and there is a fix. So I'm just going to touch on the data broker industry, and there's lots to say about all of this, but I'm going to try and keep it brief. It's a over $200 billion industry, $230 billion by one source. $30 billion was spent on our personal data last year. So that is just a staggering amount of money. And basically, most of that is funded by brands and for two main use cases. I mean, the main use case is to sell us more stuff, right? So if you have personalized experiences on websites, you will tend to buy more. And if your advertising they receive is more targeted based on your profile, you'll get more relevant ads. But those are the primary drivers as to why this industry exists and why all of our data is collected. So this surveillance economy that's organically emerged over time to feed personalization and targeting, there's a better way. We can have personalized experiences and targeted advertising, but the data can live with us instead of living with data brokers. So the future that we are following, and others are as well, is that you should own your own data and have control over it and have complete transparency in how it's used. So here's how it works. The first step is you have to, and one of the big unlocks to our business are privacy laws. So there's privacy law in California called the CCPA. There's one in Colorado called the CTA. There's one in Connecticut, and I forget the name of that one right now. It's alphabet soup, right? There's so many acronyms. But the very first step is, thanks to these laws, you can opt out of the selling or sharing of your data at scale. And we call that the opt-out machine. We launched it 5 weeks ago. And so you pay an annual fee, and we will opt you out of over 300 databases so that they cannot sell or share your data. We also ask for a copy of the data back, or you are asking for a copy of your data back. We're giving you the tool to do it, which is the opt-out machine. When you get a copy of your data back from the data brokers, which is one of your, just to back up for a second, you have certain privacy rights under these privacy laws. In California, Colorado, Connecticut, GDPR in Europe has similar rights. You have the right to opt out of the selling or sharing of your data. You have the right to access your data. You also have the right to delete it. So when we ask for your data back, we give you an identity wallet, which we call the identity manager, and it is tailor-made to hold your data. We don't get a copy of that data at known privacy, but we give the power of we give consumers the powers to hold their own data in an encrypted, secure place, and that is powered by blockchain. Just to give you a little more blockchain for tonight, there's a technology called self-sovereign identity. Once you have control over your own data, we are going to facilitate brands buying data directly from you. So brands should buy data from consumers, not from third-party data brokers who are in the surveillance business. And so the opt-out machine is our first product that I talked about. That's an annual fee, and that is how we're getting this business off the ground. That's our initial cash pump. The identity manager is really stage 2 of the business. That's a free identity wallet, and so anybody can use it to store your data. And by the way, you can go get your data from Google and Facebook and Apple and Amazon, the walled gardens as well. It's a lot of data, it's very complex. And so the identity manager will be aggregating and normalizing all that data and visualizing it in a way that we can all understand. And then the data exchange is our facilitation of people being able to monetize their own data if they want, and they don't have to. And we'll take a percentage of those data sales. So another unlock for the business in terms of our technical implementation is this blockchain technology called self-sovereign identity. or verifiable credentials. You'll begin to hear more about that. It is a technology that has just hit its maturity level, like right around this year, and a number of companies are beginning to use it. It's gone through the World Wide Web Consortium, or at least the initial specs of something called DIDs, which is another facet of this technology. But the idea is that you have total control over your data. The blockchain is just a way to keep track of it. It's very fascinating tech. So this is meant to show that we'll pull data from data brokers and put it in the identity manager for you. We'll also get it from first-party companies, first-party data companies. So those are companies you already have a data relationship with because you've done business with them. And then you can also get your data from the walled gardens, and you put it all in your data wallet, and then that gives you control over it. If you think about pulling together data sources, data from hundreds of different sources about you that are out there in the world today, and aggregating it and normalizing it, and then you can look at it and correct it, this will be some of the best data about you that can exist because you pull it from all these different sources. So I'm going to dive in a little bit more about the point of interest, especially for we're at CU Law here. That we are in a fundamentally regulatory environment that is enabling the opt-out machine because it gives you your privacy rights. Again, California, Colorado, Connecticut are the main states we're starting in. There's a law in Utah and a law in Virginia and many other laws in the works. But we're starting with those three markets because it's the most crystal clear, or sorry, the most clear. It's not crystal clear by any stretch, but they're the clearest laws that we have to work with. But I will also say the rulemaking for these laws is happening as we speak. So we are engaging with data brokers, helping people exercise their privacy rights while the rules are being written. So Colorado just released their their first pass at rules around what was passed in the legislature. They get to do the rulemaking, and so it's up for public commentary. We're mostly using the California law as we engage with data brokers, but even those rules are undergoing rulemaking in the state of California now. So I thought it might be fun to look at some of the scorecards we're developing around. So we essentially we basically built a correspondence engine. We're mostly using email to go out and engage with all these data brokers. Many of them do not like what we're doing at all. They do not want to give consumers their data back. They don't even want to opt them out. I'll say our success to opt customers out is much, much higher. And we're very early. We've got about 25 people in the system now, but we're already learning a ton. The data that we're spitting out of this system is impressive. And so and I've blurred out the names to protect the innocent or the not so innocent in some cases, but, and these scorecards are just very raw and early, but the data is getting interesting. You know, these guys, it takes an average of 12 seconds to deal with this, like an individual response. And we've got a 96% success rate. They're playing ball. It's a data broker. They're following the law. They're compliant. They're trying to do the right thing, following the letter and the spirit of the law. Here's one where it's kind of more hit and miss. There are a number of competitors out there that have already done opt-out machine type products. What we've discovered is none of them are asking for data back. It's clear through the responses. Sometimes they see us accidentally and they say, what do we do with these guys? We don't know how to handle these requests. And we even saw open rates in our email as high as almost 3,000% on these requests. So they've been forwarding our email around, opening them, reading them again and again, all the way through their general counsel office, I'm sure, based on some of the responses we've seen. And then some of them are not compliant at all. They just don't want to play ball. So they're a lot more effort. It's over 2.5 minutes to deal with each of these things. Or these guys, they are just denying everything and they're just stonewalling. And so we're seeing it's across 300 companies. Frankly, we've got 455 companies in our database right now, and there's many more hundreds that we could put in there. You know, that's what I mean by we all are in 1,000 databases we don't know about. We're all kind of teaching each other how to deal with a changing regulatory environment when we're asking them things that they've not had to encounter before. So it's been pretty interesting. But I will say, when you hit the button and watch 300 emails go out on your behalf to get your privacy back, it feels pretty good. Lastly, I'm just highlighting one of the things that we're doing is we're keeping close analytics on the behavior of all the data brokers and how compliant they are. Now, we're not in the enforcement business and never will be, and we're never going to do class action lawsuits or anything like that, but we can certainly surface this to the people who do care and are in the business of regulation, the regulators, right? And or the public domain. So we are taking notes when we get funny responses. These are some of them. On the right, you'll see we're getting quite technical. I am not a lawyer. My father was a law professor for many decades, so I like it enough. But we're spouting regulation at each other, and there's a lot of interpretation, even in the California law, which is messy but relatively mature. But these are lots of sort of the excuses you'll see. That's really it. I'll save the rest for questions. I will take a moment to shill our product here for a second. I'm an entrepreneur after all. If you'd like to sign off and get 30% off, just stick silicon flat irons in the promo code section on the checkout. You get 30% off.
If you're 30 or under and you're comfortable acknowledging that you're 30 or under, hands up for starters. Of those, keep them up for a second. This is really compelling to me. Or drop your hand like, hey, it's normal for me to give away my data. I don't care. That's pretty interesting. Super interesting. All right. Let's open up for questions.
I'm just curious, how do you guys advertise to certain customers?
Say that again.
How do you advertise to certain customers since?
How do we advertise?
Without really using them, you know?
Yeah, it's our go-to-market strategy. Right now, we're just using Google and Facebook. That's paid advertising. And one of the things, that's expensive to get customers that way. But for where we are, just getting off the ground and making sure everything works and that we can scale, that's how we're going, that's how we're approaching. We actually think that our most promising and by the way, I've run the numbers, and that's going to scale as a business based on the prices that we're charging. So we can build a business on a paid advertising model, but there's other more compelling channels. We think, and we've worked to validate this, frankly, but I'll share it anyway. There's a B2B play here that's quite interesting, in that. You know, if you look at information security inside of companies, companies have two big problems relative to data brokers and all of our data being out there so much. One is that they're hassled all the time. Anybody who's got a budget or is an executive in a company is constantly getting bombarded with calls from aggressive sellers, vendors, marketing people. But the bigger problem they have is the number one security risk is phishing attacks. Phishing attacks inside of companies is how companies get taken down. Most frequently, and one of the best ways you can social engineer, and they call this spear phishing, is to gather data about people. You can find out where they shop, where their location history is. You can find out who all their family members are, their names, their pets. I mean, the data out there is very deep. It's quite compelling, and if you can profile someone, that surface area of attack is quite large. So we think that both as the ability to reduce your security risk, but it also makes a really nice employee benefit too, because if you work for a company that cares about your data privacy and wants to pay for your data privacy with the opt-out machine, that's pretty cool, we think too.
Last question. Chris, go ahead.
John, this feels like reasons not to do this.
Great question. Certainly we're in regulatory uncertainty, right? Oh, so the question was, why should we not do this? Why is this a crazy idea? Why wouldn't a consumer do it? In the short term, you would lose personalization, right? And so you could lose personalization. So brands that buy your data at scale right now, and then when you show up on their website or see one of their advertisements, you get it more tailored to who you are based on the data profile about you. You would have a less tailored experience in the short term until we can get to the stage where you're selling your data to them that can power that personalization. But there's going to be some time for that to take effect.
Super fun to hear about this. Please help me thank Jeff. A ton of fun to do this. Small request, take 3 minutes, give us some feedback tomorrow. Come back on November 15th. Thanks for coming.